Are we live? We're live. I think we're live. Hey everybody. It's time for our Facebook Live. I am here with DL Lane, and DL Lane is the author of my latest book. My latest audiobook, of course, it's DL's book, and it's called That Place Called Home. How are you, DL? It's good to kind of meet you virtually in person.
It's always good to meet everybody, and especially you, Troy, because you already know I'm a huge fan of your work. So I'm
Well,
happy to be here.
thank you
I'm
very much.
blessed to have you work on my project.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. So it's really good when I get a positive feedback on a book that I'm reading. And hey, look, Rebecca Condon is here saying evening from England. Rebecca, what time is it out there? So it's 5 o'clock Eastern here, so that would probably make it about 10 o'clock your time in the UK. Is that? I think that's right. It's late where you are. There's Brooklyn Nights. Wow, we have an international group of people in here. So Brooklyn is from Bermuda. She's hanging out, and we've got from here in the States Julie Price. Julie, how are you? And yeah, we're having a good time already.
Hi,
But
everybody.
so anyway, I was mentioning that like when I finish a book or an audio book and it's done, it's really important for me that the author is pleased with it, because the way I look at it, this is a world that you created yourself, and you put blood, sweat, and tears into your characters, and you gave them all their words, and then of course, you had to edit all these words down. You probably started with 150,000 words, and you had to pare it down to 90,000. And I just imagine that you've spent so many hours with these characters that you're working on, that it's really important for me to get it right. So when you come to me and say, "Hey, you did a good job with these characters," it's always like a sigh of relief. It makes me feel good. So.
Well, no worries there. You did a fantastic job with these characters, not just good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So let's find out a little bit about you, and talk about your life that brought you into being an author, because that always is kind of fascinating to me, because people don't, it's not an easy job to you don't just like become an author. I don't know of anybody who goes to school to be an author and then just like jumps into it as their first career.
Right. Well, my actual career was in mental health. I worked in the mental health field for many years, and but I was always, what most authors are going to tell you this, a writer. I would scribble down things, use it as an outlet for a stress reliever. When I was in college, I was like, you need to write. But one day I decided to take the plunge and just do it. I mean, what was the worst that can happen? They tell me, no, it's totally awful. We don't want your work. But that didn't happen. And so this is my official coming out, I guess. I have been an author for 10 years, and I wrote for the past 9.5 of those under a pen name.
Okay.
So I was a best-selling author under that name. I wrote under the name of London. And I had a lot of stuff going on in my life, and a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing this. But I completely changed, hit the do-over button, and now I'm writing under my name and more faith-based romance.
Yeah. Okay. And that's how we met too.
Yes.
We met collaborating on a little piece for Audio Loves. Do you want to tell her
We
about that?
did. We did. Of course, I was a fan of your work, huge fan. And we had a mutual friend of ours on Facebook that hit me up and said, can you get with Troy and do something for Heather in Audio Loves? Because it was her birthday. She's a fantastic person. Shout out here for those of you who love audiobooks. You need to join that group.
Audio Loves is a great site. I
Yes.
know that. There are a few Facebook pages out there that are really cool, but Heather is kind of like, she's got a special place in my heart because she's so She's
She
so
is.
sweet, so
She
cool,
is.
and
And she does so much for the industry.
yeah,
She really does.
yeah.
Um,
She's a real sweetheart.
so you and I hooked up, and I wrote a little something that you recorded for her, and that was our first professional, I guess, hookup
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
And of course, I always wanted to work on you with you on a project. And then when I changed what I was doing, and this came up, I said, "Hey, Troy, do you want to do this?" And I was like, seriously, it was my birthday when you said yes, you would do it, and it was like the best birthday ever.
Oh, that's great. No, I love that. I was really really happy about that. Like, I don't know that beyond what you had written for us to collaborate on, I don't remember reading anything that you had done before. So just getting a quick glance at the book that you put in front of me. First thing off the bat, it was interesting right away, and so I said, "Oh yeah, definitely, I'd be happy to do that." So yeah, it was really cool, and I was real excited to read through that. So, A Place Called Home is the name of the book, and let me well yeah, so this I should be able to work this thing a little bit better, it's the backdrop behind us, and I think that let's see. So okay, so yeah, it's right there in the corner. You see the little picture, and we're just about ready to be published. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to come out because the Audible gods have not shared when they're going to when they're gonna release it. But it goes through QC, and then they put it up on shelves. So let's talk about the story.
Okay. Basically, That Place Called Home is about two people, Mason Miller and Brecken Laurie, who
Hmm.
were childhood best friends. They grew up in a small town called Cedar Point,
Hmm.
and as they grew up, they became so much more. They became boyfriend and girlfriend. Things happen, I won't give it away, that cause them to go separate ways, marry different people, and
Hmm.
then 20 years later, they end up back home at Cedar Point and reconnecting.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah.
it in a nutshell.
I really love the way that the story goes, where we we start in the present with Brecken and Mason, and then we go back to the beginning,
Yeah.
and then we jump forward to the present, and then go back to the beginning, and then as time goes by, these stories start to converge, right? We start years and years and years apart, and then we like keep coming back where the past is starting to catch up, and you start to get a better idea of what went into their breakup. Because I'll tell you, as I started this book, I was surprised that they did end up splitting up. I have to admit, I was not rooting for them to split up,
Right.
because they're such a great couple. I mean, they were so, like, they belonged together, these two, Mason and Brecken. So,
Yeah. But in life, things happened. And
mhm.
so something happened to them and it changed the paths of their lives, which took them a while for that path to reconverge. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it is told in both before and present and then kind of melds together. So you're getting a picture of them as they grew up and things that happened, and then in their older life, and then how they came back together and merge again.
Yeah, I think that was I think that was it was just such a great story, and it's what I feel like. I guess the best analogy I can use is that this is a palate cleanser. This book was it's so sweet, and it's very wholesome, and it's just good people going through their separate issues. Not perfect people, but good people, and I found myself kind of rooting for them as we were as we were learning more about their stories. So, by the way, if anybody has any questions during while we're chatting, just hit me up in the comments over here, and I'm trying to like post the comments out of the corner of my eye. When I see something, I'll post it, and we'll be happy to answer, whether it's for DL or for myself. So that's something we're happy to do. So it's really cool to hang out with you and talk to you. Like I feel a little bit of a little bit of a fan too. Like when I get to meet the person who wrote the words, it's cool for me. That's kind of what I love about like being a narrator, is that like I get to be an actor, and it feels a little bit like it's like the C actor's dream of the A job, where I get to do the all the parts. Like I get to be the narrator, and I get to be the hero and the heroine and the villain, and do all those parts. So it's a blast. But every time I read a really well written story, it's it's a little it's humbling, just because you put a lot of work into it. I can tell, but you make it look easy because the story just kind of naturally unfolds.
Yeah, we do put a lot of work into writing a book. I mean, if we could only just write and that's all we had to do, that would be great. But that's not the end of it. Once we write the story, there's still so many things to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You have to do Facebook Lives, and you have to you have to I mean, there's a lot of business involved in reading, or in being a successful author. You kind of have to put on a bunch of different hats when you're.
You do, many.
So what are you doing during this COVID thing? I mean, I know you've got to stay inside, and
Yes. Well, the struggle is real. I need to spend like a week at the salon. But writing, and more writing. And of course, as well as we plan it out, it seems like a lot of things converge. And so
yeah.
I have to stop what I'm doing to do something else for another project. And I am busier now, I think, than I was when I worked out in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny the way that works. And it actually, well, so there's benefits and there's drawbacks to it, because I know, now that everybody is here at the house, I really have to be careful with my time. Like I have to do my reading when everybody's asleep, because there are people running around all over the place who aren't usually here during the day, and it kind of takes you off your. I'm assuming it's the same thing for you. Like you have to concentrate on your story, but when there's lots of people running around.
I do, yes, and I write at willy-nilly times. I know a lot of authors like to set a schedule, like I'm going to write from 8 to 2 every day, but I don't do that. I kind of just sit and write at all hours of the day and night. Many times I'm still up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
You know what? I have to. I'm sorry. I'm distracting myself. So I have my little cam is on a. Oh, maybe that's a little better. My cam is on. I've got this little phone caddy that like you put your iPhone on it, like when you're going through a recipe or something, and so I put it up on that phone caddy so that I can look directly at the camera, and that is therefore at you. And the if I don't put it on right, it just kind of wobbles, and so I'm like jittery, and I like move my arms and hit the desk, and so it looks like I'm in the middle of an earthquake where I am. I noticed that my camera was like going up and down while I was sitting there talking to you. I apologize for distracting. So. Julie Price, she's from the Chicago area, and she asks, how did you develop the idea for the story? Where did it come from? She loves journeys like this. Now, that's right, yeah. So Julie had mentioned when I posted that we were going to be live together. She said, "Oh, I'm just starting this story. That's great."
Oh, thanks. Hi, Julie.
Yeah. So where'd the story come from?
Well, I'd like to tell you that all my ideas for stories just come from me in great ways, but actually, this one just sort of popped into my head about these two characters that had always been in love with each other and just couldn't seem to connect until way later in life. That it just
Mhm.
sort of came to me. And so I sat down and just started writing. And when I did that, I decided this is going to have to be a series, not of the same characters, but within Cedar Point itself and different characters.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so now because there are some characters in here that that I was reading about, and I thought, oh, that would be a great. So Gage is Mason's best friend. Mason is the main the male lead, and he was the high school quarterback, and his best friend was Gage. And
Yes.
what did Gage played on the team too, right? He
Yeah. Yeah. He's
was he the
on the
running
football
back?
team too. I think linebacker.
The linebacker, yeah. But they were best friends, and they
Yes.
remain best friends through the whole story. But there's some things in there that that you mentioned about Gage that as I'm reading, I'm thinking, I'd like to hear his story, and especially him with Brecken's little sister. There
And you
seems to be
will.
like some kind of a background in there. So now
Yeah.
I'm getting it. I see what you're doing here.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Gage and Danica are book two.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Now I understand. So Brooklyn asks if there's any super emotional scenes and how do they impact you when you're writing them?
Yes, I have had times, and in this story as well, when I was writing it, that something struck me, and it's just like wow. And I've actually had to take a tissue and dab the tears because in my head,
Mm,
these characters are real. I see them sort of like a movie. I see how they move, they act, they talk, how
mm.
everything, and so they become very real. And this sounds kind of crazy, but they tell me where they want to go. If that makes any sense.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that before, where writers will say, "Yeah, my characters they'll do something that just like that completely surprises me,"
Yeah.
which is funny, but it's
Yes.
that's a really interesting thing how like this story can kind of take you in directions that you didn't expect. It's almost like when you're dreaming and like these things
Hmm.
happen, and you look back on your dream and say, what on earth was I thinking that I created this dream. And so it seems like the same thing happens with authors, only on a like a conscious level, only it's
Yeah.
subconsciously that the characters are telling you what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So so for my part, that says, when I'm reading them, how does it impact me? There are some yeah, the it's funny that when you're reading a story and you're going through the emotions of this emotionally important thing that's happening. It's usually like a catalyst. That it usually gets you from it's that's part of the climax of the story. So there's so much resting on it, and there's so much that you learn as you're going through these emotional parts, and I have to do the same thing. I'm really, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm an emotional person. And so when I'm going through these scenes, it's, there's like an actor's thing where you have to be conscious of how you're coming across. Like, in the movies, when you see a girl crying, she's always very, very dainty and graceful the way that she cries. But like in real life, when you're crying, you don't
Yeah.
look so pretty. You're like,
No.
they do this ugly cry thing. Well, I'm kind of the same thing. Where like if I'm like really getting emotional in this story, it doesn't come across so well when when I sound like I'm falling apart. So I have to kind of like rein it back and then come back and present it the way that the hero or the heroine would if they were, being
And,
presentable
and
as
you
they
do
are.
a great job at it. You know,
Thank you.
when I hear it, when I hear what you were doing, when I was listening to it, and I knew that part was going to be an emotional one, you just got it, Troy. You got it. You got it. You just conveyed it in your voice and the things that you were doing. And so it's like, hey, well, maybe I didn't do so bad writing this because Troy got it. And so
Well,
you
thank
do a
you.
great
Yeah.
job.
Well, that's the thing. When you're reading something, and there's so many parts in this book that were easy to. I really felt like I just dropped into the book. I was immediately emotionally involved, and so it's just I read it as it struck me, and there were some parts that really resonated with me when I read this read through this story. So on my part, I'm really glad that it did come across, and I did catch what you were I picked up what the rock was putting down.
You did.
So
You
so
did.
that was cool. That was a really good question. Brooklyn is also, you have a lot in common with Brooklyn. The last book that I did was called 5 Years, and that has to do with a mental health professional and her patient and what happens when they fall for each other. And there's you being in the mental health business before you became an author, understand the ethical guidelines for not falling in love with the patient. And
Yeah.
so
Huge no-no there.
yeah, so that was the whole premise of her book, where they fall for each other, but then she says, we can't be together for 5 years. And so he says, all right. And in the beginning, he's this guy is he's such a hot shot a person or a driver personality that nobody's thinking that he's going to be able to last 5 years, but they kind of grow through through their relationship during this 5 year period. So that was a pretty cool thing. But yeah, so Brooklyn was also in the mental health business before she started writing too. So it's kind
Well,
of cool. I like that like those things inform your your fiction, is that you bring that that background with you into the books that you read. So
yes. Yeah. Well, that's good
Alicia
to know. I'm
says,
going to have to look up that book and read it.
yeah, it was a really interesting book, and I think with your background, you probably would appreciate that concept as well too. And it was a really good book, and faith and religion had a lot to do with the context for that story as well. So yeah. So we'll sell Brooklyn's book too
There you go.
while we're here. That's it's called 5 Years, and that's out now. So Alicia says, great to hear you both discussing both writing and narrating these stories and the characters, and I like that too. I really enjoy. So I like getting to know your process behind behind the stories that you do. It's something I really admire about writers, to being able to like put such great wordsmithing to these to these scenes. They make them so interesting. So I like to get the behind the scenes look at what goes into you writing the stories that you do. So Kathy Barrier says, by the way, it isn't easy to give a voice to all the characters. Oh, so Kathy's very sweet. I picked this on purpose because she gives me compliments. So, well, thank you. I appreciate that too. When when I get praise for for when somebody says, oh yeah, I did it. I kind of forgot that it was that you're the voice, and those voices just kind of like. They change, and you have a good idea of who's talking when. That's kind of like, that's my that means I did my job. So
You did. There was a part in the book, well, actually, it's the start, the prologue, where there's children. They're 10 years old, and there's a group of children. And that wasn't going to be an easy scene, Troy. And
yeah.
you nailed it. Matter of
Oh,
fact,
thanks.
my husband came in from the other room and said, oh, my word, he's super.
Well, I
because he could hear
appreciate
what I
that.
was
Yeah.
listening to.
That's nice. I like, yeah, I like that. Yeah, that was really cool. I can still remember in my head the scene where Brecken, so they're like what, 10, 11
Yeah,
years old, and
yeah,
Brecken says to Mason, she goes, "You stink, Mason Miller."
yeah.
And I thought, I was like picturing her in my head when I was reading that, and I thought it was just a really cute scene, and it was really nice. So. Oh, I don't know. So Brooklyn is asking, can we put the purchase links in the chat? And I'm not sure if we could. We may be able to do that, but right, it's not on sale yet. I guess
Yeah.
we should have mentioned that too, right, TL?
Yeah, the audiobook is in the process of hitting retail. The ebook and paper book are available, but the audiobook is in the pipeline.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have to remember that, TL, when the next time you and I maybe do a live, let's come armed with some links. Like if the audiobook's not on sale yet, I'd love for them to be able to get the ebook so that they can read it beforehand. And sometimes so they come in whisper sync too. Okay, I'm going to reveal like how unsophisticated I am. I know that whisper sync is where you can listen to the story if you want, or you can read it right on Kindle.
Mhm.
And I assume that you pay like an extra for that, or I don't know if Whisper Sync always comes with the story.
You know, some of I'm going to speak from my past experience because I have more when that some of those books just were automatically whisper synced and some weren't, and it took a while. I'm not sure how the whisper sync comes in actually.
Oh, okay, okay. But anyway, I'm thinking, well, if it works out really well, it would be cool if like you could buy the Kindle version, and then if it goes Whisper Sync, then automatically maybe you'd be able to listen to the Audible version.
I think you can upgrade to the Audible version for like a way like $3
Okay.
or four or way cheaper than the normal whatever 14.99, 21.99,
Okay.
whatever.
Gotcha. Okay. Julian Allison is a really good friend of mine, and I'm going to have to say what's up to Julian. Julian and I used to live in Phoenix. I moved to St. Louis back in 2000, and Julian and I used to work together at a hip hop station in Phoenix, and he's a really cool guy. One of my best friends. He runs like a network, a streaming online streaming radio station network in Phoenix called Central City Radio, and so it's really cool to see you pop up there, Julian. You're a good guy. So yeah, we'll do the links next time. I'll have to remember to do that. I'm just kind of getting used to the StreamYard thing. So Julie says hearing a story out loud makes it even more special, and the story becomes even more real to me. Great writing and narrating are an incredible combo. I become so invested. I'm always a sucker for a great love story anyway. Well, that's nice. Well, yeah, and Julie is an aspiring writer as well. So
I saw her on a live. Stick with it, Julie. Don't give up. Keep
very
writing.
cool. That's part of it too. Oh, so that was another thing that Julie and I were talking about when she said, "I can't. I've been working on this story for so long. I can't. I can't imagine being as prolific as some of these authors who come out with a book every other month or so." And
Well, that's tough to do, but every other
yeah,
month is pretty tough to do. But I know some authors do it. But
I told her that eventually I would assume that it becomes a little bit easier, right? As you're going along, where you come up with an idea and maybe you flesh it out while you're working on another story, and
yeah, yeah.
with repetition.
Yes, you just need to keep writing and keep writing and keep writing,
Yeah.
and don't give up because sometimes you're going to hit some walls. So I've always said if you can't get around the wall or over the wall, break through it.
Okay. Yeah.
Just
Well,
keep
that's good.
doing it.
Yeah, it's encouraging words. Because it does seem daunting, and like you got these ideas in your head, and it's so difficult to flesh them out sometimes. And I think that like getting the first one would probably be a difficult thing. So I think that I think you and I are both going to get some promotional codes of this book when it comes out, and
Yes.
I would love to figure out a way to give away some copies, especially to the people who are hanging out with us right now. I think that would be pretty cool.
I'm all for
So,
it.
all right, let's. I don't know. We might find some kind of a tricky, cool way to give away the book, or maybe we'll just say, hey, if you would like a copy of the audiobook when it comes out, just put yourself in the comments, and we'll give them away. So we'll do some pondering on that while we're chatting here. So Susan Hall Comrie says that Whisper Sync always comes with the book, so that's cool. I think that's a great thing. I kind of like that idea. Like if you're reading, and then maybe you have to hop in the car to go get the kids, or you've got laundry to do or whatever, then you can just pop your earbuds in and listen to it while you're doing that. So technology is pretty cool. So I have some ideas of like what my favorite parts of the story were. Although I think that my favorite parts might have some spoiler stuff in there. But I was thinking maybe it would be fun to maybe read a part of the book of that place called home, so that to give people an idea of what it's like, and kind of like a little scene in there. Is there a favorite part of yours that you enjoyed about the story?
It's always hard for an author to pick a favorite scene, I think, because, we have to try to dig through that entire story and try to
Hmm.
come up with something that sticks out, when many things probably stick out for us. But
Hmm.
I'm for whatever you want to read. I'm totally with that. I think you will pick a good scene if you want to read one.
Yeah. Okay. Steph Duran, by the way, not my sister, my ex-wife, but we're really good friends. So hi, Steph. I hope you're doing well. She's either recently married or going to be married soon. So I hope everything is going well for you. And we'll give a shout out to Amanda Taylor, who says, "Hey, how are you? We are doing really good." So that's cool. All right. Well, let me see if I can find. I'm gonna pull up the scene. I wonder if I can. Wonder if I can do this. If I can, let me see if I can share this screen. I don't know if I can share it or not. Let's see here. Easy with two monitors. Screen sharing works best on a good monitor. All right. Well, let me try to share this screen and see what happens. Oh, well, screen sharing might crash. Let me see if. Well, let's see. That's the entire screen. Let me try and do it on a. Let me do it on a Chrome tab. Well, let's see. Maybe I'll do it on here. Share. And then. Okay, let me pull this over here. That's a good thing I don't have porn on here. All right, let me see if I can pull this over here, and then you should be able to see it here. And if I do that, now I'll just have to look off to this. So ignore me. I'm going to be looking over to the side while I try to read this story. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. Okay, so we had mentioned before that the story goes from the past to the present, to the past to the present, and then they kind of converge to give you the full story, which is a really cool. It's a cool thing that must have left you with a headache trying to keep everything straight, DL. But I really enjoyed the way that you put that story together. So
Thank
DL
you.
Lane is the author of A Place Called Home, and here's a part from chapter 24. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read a portion of it. Cool. And I will be screwing this up. You will hear the things. the mistakes, but I won't throw any curse words in there. That was another thing. It was embarrassing because my editor missed a couple of the edits where I had to redo a retake, and I was throwing in some tasty curse words when I screwed up too much.
Don't be embarrassed. It was actually really funny.
It's so I always think to myself, man, you know what? They're gonna, someday I'm gonna let loose with a string of obscenities that's going to melt the monitor. But I guess that comes with the territory. That's what I get for losing my temper. All right, here we go. This is chapter 24. Before. You and Mace going to the sweethearts' dance? Gage asked, leaning against the locker next to Brecken's, chatter and movement swirling all around them. She grabbed her algebra book and closed the little metal door with a shrug. We haven't talked about it. Are you guys talking at all? Yeah, she said. The truth was, when they spoke, everything was superficial. Look, Gage straightened and put his palms on her shoulders. I don't know what's going on with you guys, but since he's still wearing your ring on that gold chain around his neck and you're still wearing his rings, I'm guessing you guys haven't called it quits yet, right? No, we haven't. Well, then whatever it is, get it settled before you do. Gage shifted his gaze, looking past Brecken. And if I were you, I'd do it quickly. Turning, she saw Kristen flip her long hair, pop up on her toes, and hug Mason. But the thing that got to her most was him. The guy she loved, who always pushed Kristen away, appeared to be embracing her back. A sharp knife of pain sliced through her chest so hard she grabbed at it. She's trying to sink her claws in, you know that, don't you? Gage asked, pulling her gaze back to him. She's been trying for a long time. He frowned. So? You're going to stand back and let her? Popping up on her toes, she tossed her arms around his neck and whispered, No. He smelled like leather, crisp, clean water, and sunshine. Gage seemed to stiffen for a second, then put his arms around her. What are you doing? Saying thank you. For what? For being a true friend, Brecken said an instant before she was ripped from his arms, Gage being shoved back, hard. What's going on? Mason shouted, bucking up, chest to chest with Gage. Dude, I want to know the same thing. What's going on with you? You had your hands all over my girl. Mason, Brecken said, grabbing his arm, the adrenaline pumping through him, noticeable to her touch. Knock it off. Gage is our friend. He turned on her, eyes flashing fire. Who you were hugging and whispering to in a more friendly... Oh, wait. See, there you go. He turned on her, eyes flashing fire. Who you were hugging and whispering to in a more than friendly way. You are being ridiculous and making a butt of yourself. Is there a problem here? Coach Ames said, striding through the gathering crowd. Gage shook his head. None with me. Mr. Miller? Coach asked. No, Coach. No problems. Then I suggest you all stop whatever is happening here and get to class. Kristen smirked at her and shook her head before walking off. Mason's, yes, sir, was in unison with Gage's. Going now. As everyone started to walk away, Mason grabbed Brecken's hands. We need to talk. She had no clue why the next words came out of her mouth, other than she was mad, hurt, and perhaps a little crazy. But what she did say was, talk to Kristen. I bet she'd love it. Before she stomped her way down the hall. All right, so there we are.
Yay!
So that's kind of an idea of what happens when I'm reading a story. Like I'll lose track of like who's talking and do it in the wrong voice for a little while and have to go back and redo it. So.
Well, we sometimes lose track of who's talking to when we're writing it.
Yeah. It was really, so by the way, Gage and Mason, they become friends again, and that friendship stays all the way through the story, and they're friends as adults too.
Yes.
So, and speaking of adults, one of the cool things about this story, excuse me, is that it does. This is a romance that takes place. They're in their 40s, right?
Close, yeah. They split up at 18 and they come back 20 years later, so 38,
Okay.
39.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of fun. Me being older than that, it's kind of nice to read a story for for somebody who's closer to my age. So that's that's a cool kind of a thing to read, just because it's I feel like I have a little bit more in common with with those two. And then another cool thing that I enjoyed about the book, this part right here, Kristen, the way that you write your characters, these are so the main characters are Christian, and they walk in the faith, and and they're good people. Like I said, they're good people. They're not perfect people, which is true of Christians, right?
Nobody is perfect. We all make
Yeah.
mistakes.
Nobody's perfect. They go through their trials and tribulations. But even so Kristen is one of the characters, and she is going after Gage, and she's got a thing for Gage. But even with her, I think that you presented her in a way that says, yeah, she's not perfect, but she is she's a person, and so I think that it was it was a really sweet way that you presented these characters. So Susan,
Thank
I don't know
you.
if we answer the question. She said, Susan says, this is a small town second chance romance. What's the heat level of that place called home? And it's very sweet. This one is
Yeah.
it's very wholesome. So
I probably might be considered a bit of a rebel because I go to the edge at some point, but I never step over it, so there isn't any
mm,
explicit scenes. However, there is stuff in the book that takes you, I don't know how to say it,
mm,
down that path without explaining it explicitly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something that I think that you'd be okay with your daughter reading this story. A teenage daughter, right, or an older teen daughter. But yeah, it's a very very sweet book, very wholesome book. I enjoyed reading it. Like I said, it's a palate cleanser because a lot of the stuff that I read can get pretty steamy and hot, and it was nice to get into like the emotional part of a good relationship. So I thought that was that was pretty cool. So there we go. She says low heat. We should ask, and sure enough. So Julie says I have to read faster. Love it. Well, we'll keep making more, Julie. So
Yes, book 2 is out, so me and Troy and I need to get together and chat about doing that project next.
yeah, so that'll be cool. Yeah, and Betty says the same thing. I like switching up within the genre too. So I like that. Yeah, I like that too. I mean, it's nice to read different different books of I don't know. I love Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue, but I love Nora Jones too. And I think that like depending on whatever your mood is, then you find something that works for you. And this book really it definitely worked for me. I enjoyed reading it. So
Oh, thank you.
well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we just do this? Since I didn't come up with any really interesting and tricky and fun ways to give away the book. Let's just do this. When you get a chance, and over the next 24 hours or so, while we have supplies, in terms of like the number of codes that we get once the book goes on sale, if you want to put your request in the comments to get a free copy of the audiobook when it comes out, I'll be happy to share whatever codes that I have, and we can just give them first come first serve if that sounds good to you.
Sounds great. I'm all for giving codes. I give them away in my past, and I'm going to give them away now.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like that. The people who are really big fans of listening to audiobooks and enjoy them. I think that it's nice. It's nice to to give people the opportunity to not use a credit if they don't have to. And I every one of these people on this feed, I don't know all of the people on the feed because we're syndicating to TL's page and my page. So I don't know everybody here, but everybody that I connect with and communicate with, I enjoy. I like talking to people who like to listen to audiobooks. So we will we'll be happy to give them away. Susan Hall Comrie asks, "Are your characters diverse?" And we have let's see. So Gage is he's Native American, right? So
Yes.
is it his mom who's
His mom was Cherokee, so he's part Native American. In his book, I also have the fire chief, or the head of the fire department, is African American.
Okay, yeah. So okay, here I've got a question for you. Speaking of diversity, so when I read through the book and I knew that Gage was, hey, there's Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hey, hi, Heather.
It's good to see Heather.
Yes.
But so anyway, so in the book, as I'm reading it, I realized, oh wow, Gage is Native American. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a lot of my friends were. Let's see, we in Albuquerque, we're surrounded by reservation, and we have a lot of people there who are in the Navajo Nation, the Apache Nation, and the Hopi Nation, and so I had a lot of Native American friends, and the way that they talk, like if they're raised speaking in their Native American tongue, like Navajo, or especially like Navajo and Hopi, they have a very, very particular accent, and so I kind of gave a little bit of that to Gage, even though he wasn't raised in probably he was adopted, but
Right.
But I did give him a little bit of the same characteristic. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but I kind of like did that as part of my I don't know, my kind of shout out to my hometown. So that was my my attempt at doing a different kind of a voice for him. So Heather says we're both doing fabulous. That's right. Yeah, Heather. I think we've talked about that before too. Heather, you're from California though, right? I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Well, she's not going to be able to answer in real time, but
She
anyway,
is. She is from California, and she's a beautiful person on the inside and out.
she's very sweet. I really we were talking about you, Heather. I don't know if you were here for the earlier part of this conversation, but we were. If your ears were burning, it's because we were talking about you. But it was all good. Yeah, I'm 1/8 Apache Indian as well. It was I'm not, maybe not. It was my great grandfather's mother was Apache, so that would make him half. My grandfather was a quarter. My dad was an eighth. I'm a 16th. So I'm like right there.
Yeah, I have a lot of Indian in my background as well. You can't tell it by looking at me, but there is quite a bit in my mother's side of the family.
Yeah, yeah. You wouldn't know what I have mostly Spanish and then Native American, and I'm like a Heinz 57. I have a little bit of everything in me. So, but I mostly look just plain old white. So
Me too.
So that was fun, and I've got a few different people here saying that they would like to give a copy, get a copy. So we'll just kind of keep track of the thread. This video is going to be up, and so I'm hoping that other people will be able to see it as as it goes along. But we'll keep track of this thread, and I'll try to get a list of everybody who asked for a copy, and we'll get them out whenever they come out.
You sure will. Sounds
So,
great.
does that sound good? Does anybody have any other questions about the book or about DL's new career that she's been doing for years and years and years?
Yes, I've been writing for years, but I switched from writing and doing something else with my writing. And people thought I was crazy for doing that, to leave an established role as a best-selling author and start over again. But it was the right thing for me to do.
Yeah, I think that's I don't know. I think that's it's really admirable, because it takes some courage to make that decision, right? But
It took me a while in making it, and lots of contemplation, but knowing that I had to make a lot of changes in my life, not just with career. So I set about doing that.
yeah. Well, you did a good job. I really love what what you wrote with that place called home, and I can't wait to get into Gage's story, and
Yeah, I'm excited about that one too, because we love all of our book babies, but sometimes certain ones stick out as maybe a favorite. And so I can't wait to see what you can do with that. And I know it's going to be fantastic.
pressure's on now. So Brooklyn asks, what did you write previously? And you went as London.
Yeah,
Right?
I wrote under London St. James. So everything I wrote was romance. However, it was explicit in nature all the way around. And so when I decided to hit the do-over button, that doesn't mean I won't write just some contemporary stories, but I'm not going to fall back into the explicit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Like if the focus of your life is going in one way, to write in things that just don't speak to you, it wouldn't be as good as what you're focusing on right now. I mean, you wouldn't be able to give it a authentic effort, right?
Well, yeah, and I think as the years went on, I lost some of my spark and joy along the way, and I found that again. And I love to write, and I want to keep that love. I don't want it to become, a job, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're saying. I've done, and I still do a lot of like different voiceovers. I do commercials and narrations for businesses and e-learning and things like that, and I enjoy that. But I never found anything close to what audiobooks are for me. Like when I first started doing audiobooks, I realized, wow, that's real. That's what I want. That's what I want to do. And kind of another analogy. And please don't think that I'm like I'm not a pervert, because I'm going to do another porn reference here. But it's kind of like when you realize, wow, there is so much to this internet thing than just like people talk about that all the time, but it's like focusing on one tiny little aspect of what's out there. When you realize that there's a whole world of different things. Here's a better analogy rather than porn. Music. So I, as a kid, I was one of the original younger listeners, or our younger friends here won't know this phrase, but the phrase was called "disco sucks." And back in the 70s, when disco became a thing, Studio 54 and the Bee Gees and Gloria Gaynor and the Bay City Rollers, and these bands. Disco was this certain type of music, and then it became like so polarizing. You were into rock or you were into disco, and if you were into rock, it was like, oh, disco sucks. And that was what I was into. I was a rock head. If it wasn't Led Zeppelin or Yes or Rush or you know those old school ACDC or Alice Cooper, it sucked. It just wasn't worth listening to. And I remember one time my stepdad said, "Well, you should listen to different kinds of music with with an open ear." And I said, "No, it all sucks. If it's not rock, I don't like it." And he said, "Well, here, listen to this song." And he turned on this country station, and it was Marty Robbins' "Old El Paso." And if you're not familiar with the song, it's a great story about a guy who falls in love with a girl who belongs to the bad guy, and he fights for her, and he ends up dying. I don't think I'm putting any spoilers out there. If you haven't heard the song, well, you should have listened to it because the song is made back in the 60s. But anyway, so the song was so great. It just like at that moment in time when I heard that song, I thought, wow, this is great. It was like this light shined down from heaven and made me realize there's like a ton of different kinds of music out there that I haven't been exploring yet. And ever since then, I've been a fan of jazz, rock, R&B, hip hop, classical music, and country, and all these different kinds. And once I realized that I could enjoy any kind of music, it really opened my eyes. So I feel like it's the same thing with writing, where yes, there's a lot of really good steamy romance out there, and it's fun to read, and it's exciting and I don't know, titillating, and it's cool. But then when you come across a book like That Place Called Home, and it gets into these all of the different aspects of what a relationship is all about, especially when it spans years. It really leaves you feeling at the end of the book like you've read something special, and it gives you a feeling of gratification that you've enjoyed such a wonderful story. So yeah, I really appreciate getting to read that story.
Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate you narrating the book.
Thank you. I appreciate you listening through that whole thing. I am a good talker, and one time I remember I was talking to my daughter when she was about 8, and she asked me just a simple question, and I answered it with this long diatribe like I just gave you. And she was looking at me, and she really looked like she was getting it, and I felt really good. And she looked up at me and she said, "Wow, Dad." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You can talk for a long time." And I realized, yeah, I am a good talker. So I appreciate you staying with me, and for everybody else who stayed listening to that tremendous monologue. I appreciate that. So that's I think that's it for our Facebook Live. We've been on for almost an hour.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Definitely. Yeah. So DL, thank you very much. I appreciate all the time that you spent, and it was good to actually meet you in person and spend some time with you and get to answer some questions from the people who haven't heard the book yet, but hopefully we'll get to hear it pretty soon.
Yes, thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure talking with you. And I didn't gush as a fangirl and go, "I'm talking to Troy Duran."
Well, I appreciate it. And I didn't do the same thing when I didn't do that Chris Farley thing that said, "Hey, do you remember when you wrote that really emotional scene that almost made me cry? That was cool." So Yeah, thank you for all the time, and yeah, we'll hang out. We'll answer questions on. Well, I don't know what you're doing, DL. You may. It's already what 6 o'clock where you are, so
Yeah.
it maybe Miller time for you. But I'm going to hang out here for a little bit, and once I hop off, I'll jump back on the threads. So if anybody has any other questions or wants to chat, then I'll be hanging out on there.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
do the same thing. I'll get back on the thread so I can actually, because I can't see like you can.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you can't even see the comments until they.
I can see them, but probably not like you can. So I'll get on the thread
Oh,
and try to answer.
okay. Yeah, definitely. So we'll hop on the thread and we'll close out the broadcast from here. So thank you for the time, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Troy.
All right. Bye.
Bye.